Hi everybody, so these are notes on circles. We have briefly discussed them before when we went over formulas, but we're going to focus really on them today in this video. So starting with the definition of area of a circle. The area of a circle, when we use that expression, we are referring to the number of squares and by that I mean the total space, inside the circle. And when we talk about circumference, circumference is the distance around the circle. So it's another word for perimeter. Now, when we're talking about circles, though, we need to know the vocabulary of diameter and radius because we need to know those lengths for the formulas. So the diameter is a line that passes through the center of the circle. Okay, and so the center would be right about there. So diameter goes through the center to both sides of the circle. Now a radius is just half that length. And it's important to know the relationship between the two. So we're going to do 3 problems where we find the diameter and radius. So in question number 1, what's been given to us is the diameter. The diameter is 5 centimeters, and to find the radius, I'll divide 5 by 2, and that gives me 2.5 centimeters for the radius. Okay, so the radius would look something like this. For question number 2, what's been given this time is the radius. The radius is 8 centimeters. So if I have the radius and I want to find the diameter, I'll multiply by 2. The diameter would be 16 centimeters. And in problem number 3, this is also the radius. So if I want to find the diameter, I would multiply it by 2. And that means the diameter is 6 feet long. And if I drew it in, the diameter would look something like this, and it would be 6 feet. Now, with the other shapes we looked at, there was no formula for perimeter because you would just add up all the sides to find perimeter. But, of course, with a circle, there are no sides, so we need a formula to find the distance around the circle. So there are 2 formulas, but they both basically do the same thing. To find the circumference, you can multiply 2 times pi times your radius, or you can multiply pi times your diameter. Now remember that pi is 3.14, and let's make sure that we write down r is the radius, and d stands for the diameter. So in these examples, starting in example A, if I wanted to find the circumference, first of all, I've been given the diameter. The diameter is 8. So the formula I'm going to use is that circumference is equal to pi times the diameter. And so what I should be plugging into my calculator is 3.14 times 8. And when I multiply that out, 3.14 times 8 is 25.12, and the units would be centimeters. For problem B, this time I was actually given the radius, so the radius is equal to 6, so I'm going to use the formula circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius. So the numbers that I would plug in, of course, are 2 times 3.14 times the radius, which is 6. So 2 times 3.14 times 6, the circumference or the distance around the circle is 37.68, and the units would be feet. We can also use the formula to find some missing lengths. So for example, if we know that the circumference of the circle is 62.8 and we want to find the diameter, we can use the formula circumference equals pi times the diameter. And since we know the area is 62.8, or excuse me, not the area, but the circumference is 62.8, we can substitute that in for circumference, and of course pi is 3.14 times the diameter. Using algebra to undo this, I can divide both sides by 3.14. So that cancels out the 3.14 on the right hand side. And the diameter is 20 centimeters. And part B says find the radius of the circle. Well, if the diameter is 20, that means the radius must be 10 centimeters. Now with circles, it's kind of difficult to count the number of squares inside the circles because the edge of the circle is rounded, so we're just going to use the formula area equals pi times radius squared. But let's not forget that this formula, when you see pi times radius squared, of course pi is really 3.14, and radius squared means you're just going to multiply the radius 2 times. So in example A, it says find the area. Now notice there's only one formula, and that formula uses the radius. So we've been given the diameter. The diameter is 8 centimeters, which means the radius is 4 centimeters. So using our area formula, area equals pi times radius squared, we're going to multiply 3.14 times the radius, which is 4, times the radius, which is 4. So 3.14 times 4 times 4, which gives me an area of 50.24 centimeters squared. Don't forget, area, no matter what shape we're talking about, is our units are squared. In example B now, we were given the radius. The radius is 7 feet, so that makes our job a little bit easier. We don't have an extra step where we need to find it. So using the formula area equals pi times radius squared, we will substitute in 3.14 times the radius, which is 7, times the radius again. So 3.14 times 7, which is 153.86 feet squared. So there's just over 153 little squares inside that circle. Okay, so the last one we're going to look at, we've got a composite figure here. And in this composite figure, we've got a rectangle down here on the bottom, and then we actually have a half of a circle up here on top. So I think starting with the rectangle, we can find the area of that, no problem. So I guess I'll label the rectangle as shape number 1 and the half circle as shape number 2. So for shape number 1, it's a rectangle, so the formula is area equals length times width. And in this case, the length and the width are 7 and 10. So the area of the rectangle is 70 inches squared. Now, as far as the circle goes, right here is the diameter. Okay, it goes through the center of the circle. So the diameter is 10 inches. But to use area, we need to know the radius. The radius would be 5. All right, so area formula. Area equals pi times radius squared, which really means 3.14 times 5 times 5. And 3.14 times 5 times 5 is 78.5 inches squared. But when we look at this picture, it's not a full circle. There's only half of a circle here. So at this point, I'm going to do an extra step, and I'm going to take the 78.5 and divide it by 2. That's how we find half of something. So the area of the circle that we can actually see is 39.25 inches squared. So if we want to get the total area, we add the two together, just like when we've done composite figures with rectangles. So 70 plus 39.25 is 109.25 inches squared for the whole entire figure.